Good morning, everybody. Kun Kanchai, we are live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our episode 3 of our Doing Business in Thailand webinar series. So this, let's say, episode is organized by Franco-Thai Chamber of Commerce. So I'm Kanchai. There's also Quentin and the team members of the FTCC. We are here for the SME Committee organized by FTCC, and it's my pleasure to introduce today's sessions. For this third episode, we have the privilege of welcoming Baker McKenzie Thailand, one of the world's leading international law firms, with deep expertise in regulatory affairs right here in Bangkok. Today's session will be led by Kun Praveen and Kun Prim. Okay, Kun Praveen is head of the Regulatory Affairs Service Department, and Kun Prim is Regulatory Affairs Manager. So together, they will walk us through the legal and regulatory landscape for the healthcare products in Thailand. And whether you are already operating in healthcare or simply exploring the opportunities, today's sessions is designed to give you practical, actionable guidance. So feel free to write in the comment section if you have any questions, and Quentin and myself will be happy to read, to raise our hand and ask questions to them during the presentations. Okay, so without further delay, I will hand the floor over to our speakers. Baker McKenzie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kun Kanjai. My name is Praveen Gomez. Michael, please call me Michael. I'm, as Kun Kanjai kindly introduced, the head of our Regulatory Affairs Services Department, and also part of our healthcare and life sciences in Baker McKenzie, Bangkok. I'm joined by Kun Prim. I'll let her introduce her.
Yes, my name is Prim Utitanon. I'm the Regulatory Affairs Manager, providing services in advising and consultation for our clients in regards to healthcare products under the FDA control.
Sure. So today our session will be focusing on the healthcare products regulatory pathway in Thailand, or framework. I understand from the attendees that some of the attendees may be focusing on pharmaceuticals, medical devices, or other healthcare products. So we will touch on the laws which cover these products. Obviously, we can't get into all the details today, but obviously we'll try and give you an overview, at least to have an understanding of some of the key issues that may be relevant. And also particularly if any company or if you are interested in bringing a product into Thailand, we'll also be talking about how to register the products in Thailand, some of the key requirements, particularly from an FDA perspective as well. And lastly, we'll talk about some of the risks or legal issues that may be relevant to setting up the entity in Thailand, particularly for healthcare products. So just on the first part, the regulatory framework for Thailand, it's a little bit scattered in terms of the laws which apply. So in some countries, you may have one single law governing all healthcare products. But in Thailand, as you can see from the slides, there are various laws which cover all the different products. So each product basically has a law relevant to itself. So for example, if you were looking to import drugs or medical devices into Thailand, those would be under separate laws. And the reason why this is important is because, as you see here, the first key point is how you classify your product. So in some markets, obviously it might be very clear whether your product is, for example, a drug or a medical device, but in certain cases it may not be so very clear. So for example, we have a lot of now software which is used in the healthcare sphere. Sometimes, obviously, the claims related to the software goes into a medical sphere, right? So if you start to talk about how your software can diagnose diseases, illnesses, and create, a reading basically so that users can understand that if they have a health issue, potentially that could mean that your software product could be deemed to be a medical device. Similarly, in terms of, we now have different kind of products, right? So some products may be a drug, but actually, when you look at it, you may not even want to go that far, right? So for example, we have a lot of vitamin products, health supplements. Usually those could be deemed to be food products under the food law. But if you have certain claims related to the product which go into sort of the medical sphere, again, having a medical claim, diagnostic purposes, prevention of diseases and illnesses, that could mean that your product could be classified as a drug. So as a starting point, before we even get to the different laws, you need to understand what sort of products you're looking to bring into. And that could mean that it's not just about how you yourself deem the product to be. It may be how you use the claims related to the product's intended use. And that means that potentially it could fall under different laws. So again, the reason why it's important, because if a product is deemed, for example, to be a drug, it will have completely different requirements in terms of importation to a food product. So that's why I think it's very important at the outset to understand what your product will deem to be, and then it will fall under these different laws.
Yeah, and also each law, for example, Drug Act. Under the Drug Act, there are different kinds of drugs as well. For example, new drugs, new chemical entity, new combination, new route of administration, things like that, and also generic or new generic. These categories are also important because the certain amount of documentation that you need to supply to the FDA for product registration are different. And also, even though the quality system of the manufacturing facility is the same, but the documentation and the complexity of the documentation are different.
Yeah. So again, just to summarize this slide before we move on, different products in Thailand will fall under different laws. So that means if you have different products in your portfolio, you may be subject to different requirements in terms of importation, setting up the entity, how you manage or store your products in Thailand. So again, just to emphasize the importance here to understand first and foremost what your product may be classified as, and then that will lead to the pathway as to what law governs your product and how you can bring that product into market in Thailand. So just on this point, whilst different laws, as we were saying, govern different healthcare products in Thailand, there are some elements of these laws which are similar to one another. So in the first point, if you are looking to bring in a product into Thailand, whether it is a food, whether it's a drug, whether it's a medical device, under these laws, you would be required, first and foremost, to obtain an import license, right? So they may have different names under the various laws, but basically, you need to get an import license, and that means that you need to set up an entity in Thailand. The entity in Thailand would then have to apply to get the import license from the FDA. And this, obviously, again, under the various laws, there are different requirements in terms of how you get the import license. But the basic premise is that you need to have an entity in Thailand, and you need to have representatives in Thailand who can get the import license on your behalf, right? So in terms of the entity itself, which can get the import license, generally speaking, these laws don't have foreign shareholding restrictions. So as some of you may be aware, I understand from some of the previous sessions that FTCC have held, you may have already been aware that Thailand, we have a foreign business law. Under the foreign business law, if you set up an entity where your company, the majority of shares are held by foreigners, your company would be subject to the Foreign Business Act, and therefore there are specific requirements. But those are very specific to the Foreign Business Act. In addition to the Foreign Business Act, under these various laws, as an entity which is operating in the healthcare sphere, again, you would be required to obtain the import license. But these laws, again, they don't have shareholding restrictions. That means that if you were to set up a company in Thailand to import and sell drugs or medical devices or food or cosmetics, you could look to set up as a foreign majority owned company. But having said that, even though there are no shareholding restrictions under these laws, you would still be subject to the specific requirements under the Foreign Business Act. For example, you may be required to obtain a foreign business license, or you need to set up the entity, minimum capital requirements of at least 100 million to operate a wholesale business. So those are, in terms of the foreign business law, we won't go into details of that, but just to be aware that you could set up as a foreign majority shareholder company. The FDA itself, generally, again, these laws, they don't have requirements in terms of you need to prove, you can operate in Thailand, right? But I understand that, for example, in practice, under certain laws for example, foods, the FDA may require, right?
Yes.
So for example, in terms of the practice, if you were looking to set up an entity to apply for an import license for drugs or medical devices, the FDA may not ask, right, in terms of the shareholding, but if it's a food product, strangely enough, the food division of the FDA, they usually require evidence that as a foreign majority owned company, you do have the right to operate in Thailand, whether it's under a Board of Investment Promotion Certificate, whether it's under the foreign business law itself, or as we're saying, the minimum capital requirements that we were talking about instead of setting up. But again, generally speaking, there are no foreign sharing restrictions. There are also no, in terms of directorship, no general requirements that you need to have directors who are Thai nationals or directors who are residents in Thailand. But having said that, these laws, they do have personnel requirements, right? So for example, under the Medical Device Act, a medical device importer needs to have what we call a license holder, an individual who is sort of the representative of the company in Thailand, and also a medical device controller who oversees the operations of the entity. These two individuals who are required to be appointed under the Medical Device Act, they need to be residents in Thailand. So again, there will be different requirements in terms of personnel appointments, depending on what products you need to get the license for. The other important part, in addition to the import license, assuming that you don't carry manufacturing operations in Thailand, if you were to import the products, you would also need to get product registration for each product, right? So let's say you were looking to import drugs into Thailand for sales. In addition to the main import license, the single import license that you get, each and every product which you look to import into Thailand, for example, if you had, let's say, a diabetes product, a product for cancer, a product for other types of illnesses, each product which you're looking to bring into Thailand needs a single product registration. So that is the other key requirement. So again, irrespective of the law, generally speaking, you may need to get a product registration for each individual product which you're looking to import into Thailand specifically. In addition to the importation licenses requirements, just so that you're aware, generally speaking, for under all these laws, whether it's a drug, medical device, cosmetic foods, there are specific requirements in terms of the location which you're looking to set up. So basically, you can't really just set up a paper company where the office, which is just a virtual office, right? You need to have a physical location because there will be storage requirements in terms of when you bring in the products into Thailand. The FDA will actually look to see if you have the right requirements in place. so that you can store the products correctly. That's sort of the overview of the first phase we would look at when you're talking about before being able to import the product. So again, just to summarize, you need the main import license and each product registration license for that you would need for each product that you're looking to bring into Thailand. There are also personnel requirements and specific physical storage location requirements for each and every under each of these laws as well. Once you get the licenses and you bring the products into Thailand, just so that you're aware, we do have quite stringent advertising controls in Thailand. And again, going back to when you're looking to classify the product, right? If your product, if you sort of the product's intended use, if you have claims that say that the product has a medical perspective, meaning that it's intended, you intend it to sort of diagnose, treat illnesses or diseases, and therefore the product is deemed to be a drug product in Thailand. The way you can advertise a drug product is very much stricter than you could advertise a food product, for example. So in generally speaking, you can't advertise drugs in Thailand unless they are, OTC drugs, basically. So we the only drug you can advertise to the general public is an OTC drug. That means that generally speaking, most of the drugs in Thailand you can't advertise to the general public. That also means that you can't sell the product online. Because obviously selling online means that you are advertising or promoting the product through to the general public. That's why it's so important, going back to the point that if you're looking to classify your product, sometimes you need to see how you want to market your product in Thailand, because otherwise, if it falls into a drug product, you could have severe restrictions in terms of how you can advertise, promote the products in the market as well. And after that, obviously, we have a post-marketing surveillance regime whereby, generally speaking, if there is an adverse event, you would be required to report these events to the FDA. In certain cases, for example, for medical devices, even if the adverse event occurred outside of Thailand, you would still be required to report it to the Thai FDA as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you want to add it.
Yes. Just to add to what Kun Praveen just mentioned, for the number 2, the pre-marketing approvals for drugs, before you register a product, you also need to, as the manufacturer or the product owner, you need to do the GMP clearance, meaning that you need to accredit the manufacturing facilities with the Thai FDA before you can start the pre-marketing approvals. And for the there are also other certificates or licenses that you also need for drug, for example, as well. You also need to have the good distribution practice for drugs. This also you can register with the FDA as well. They will do the inspection of the import office and also the storage or the warehouse. And also medical device, the FDA has also the good distribution, import and distribution practice as well, which you need to follow the regulations. For the advertising, the FDA provide information to the if the advertising is for healthcare professionals, in some product categories, you don't need to register with the FDA, but you need to notify the FDA that you have this piece of information that you need to provide to the healthcare professionals. So it is less time consuming for the importers or the drug companies. Yeah.
Yeah. So generally speaking, what Kun Praveen is mentioning is that for most healthcare products, except I think maybe cosmetics, right? Before you can advertise your product, you need to get a license from the FDA. That means that the process for marketing, promoting the product, you need to build in the time that it would need to get approval from the FDA to get the advertising license. unless obviously, as Prem was mentioning, there are certain limited exceptions where you may not need to get pre-approval from the FDA, but those are very limited circumstances. Cosmetics, you can advertise without getting a license, so that means that it's a more open market, if you were, quicker.
You need to follow the guidelines anyway.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the advertising, there are a lot of requirements in terms of what you can advertise, the statement you can use. So you need to be aware as well that each marketing promotion material which you issue or want to use in Thailand will be subject to these laws, and they could be subject to pre-approval. Even if they weren't subject to pre-approval, you would need to ensure that your marketing materials, advertisements, follow the regulations under each of these laws as well.
Yeah.
And just last point for the slide. This is not to say that you can't use a distributor. So for example, for some companies that don't want to test the Thai market, basically, or they feel like they don't have the capability yet to set up an entity in Thailand. If you wanted to bring your products into Thailand, one other option you could consider is using a third party to import the product on your behalf and sell it in Thailand. And that generally means that you using a distributor or third party service provider to apply for the licenses with the FDA to bring in the products into Thailand and to market it. But having said that, one point to consider here is that in Thailand, we don't have the concept of holding the license on behalf of a third party. So that means that if you use a third party, for example, the distributor, to get the import license and product registrations on your behalf to bring your products into Thailand, they would hold those licenses in their own name, not on your behalf. And it also means that in certain areas, you would need to disclose a lot of information to the distributor, because obviously they would need to use that information as part of their application process to obtain the licenses from the FDA. That means that potentially they could come into contact or they would obtain confidential proprietary information related to your product as well. So that option is available. It's just a balancing act to see whether the risk of wanting to use a distributor.
Yeah, and just to add to that, only some type of drugs and some type of medical devices that the product licenses are transferable. For other classifications of foods, cosmetics, the licenses are not transferable. So when you consider using a third party to hold the license for you, you need to be aware that in some cases, if you want to change the distributor or if you want to set up your own company in Thailand in the future, you may need to do the registration once again.
Yeah. Because I mean, obviously, in most cases, when you're doing or the distribution agreement, you can put into the contractual terms, obviously, rights and obligations when the relationship ends, right? So generally speaking, typically you would put in the agreement to say upon the termination or of the relationship, the distributor must cooperate with you to transfer the licenses if they're transferable. If not, they need to help you. But obviously, it doesn't always work 100% of the time, because once they hold the license, you would have to go through, and obviously the system of filing a complaint against them if they don't cooperate, right, or they don't help you in accordance with the contractual terms. The FDA itself won't get involved. Obviously, even if you say, oh, you're the product owner, if someone is the license holder, they would just say you need to handle it yourself. So that again is you shouldn't expect help from the FDA in terms of, if you are the product owner and you're in the relationship with the distributor, you want to force them to transfer the license to you. That doesn't. We don't have a avenue to do that under Thai law. So again, you would need to make a claim against the distributor yourself. But again, this is just worst case scenario, right? But generally speaking, you can put those things into the contractual terms, and we would encourage you, if you were looking to set up a relationship with a distributor, if you didn't want to set up in Thailand at the moment, to very carefully review the contractual terms to ensure that the things that need to occur upon the termination or the expiration of your relationship is in the agreement. So that at least you have an avenue to pursue against the distributor if they don't cooperate you in accordance with the contractual terms. So this is just, again, in terms of how we classify the product. I think we may focus a little bit on drugs and medical devices today. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about how we classify each of the different products in Thailand.
Yeah, the FDA has different types of classifications for drugs. On the screen, you will see that there are specially controlled drugs, dangerous drugs, and things like that. These are the classifications that will be specified on the product label, on the drug label. However, when we do the product registration, the classification will be different. For example, new drugs, new generic, household, orphan drugs, or biologics, something like that. So again, these the manufacturer will have to provide different or certain types of documentation for different kinds of drugs. For medical device, there are also class 1 to class 4, 1 being low risk and 4 being high risk. These will be in accordance with the ASEAN harmonization classifications. However, but sometimes the Thai FDA has different way of categorize a classification of medical device. So we need to ensure that we follow according to the regulation or the FDA's guideline to be able to identify which classification the medical device will be.
And in terms of medical device, one particular focus that we're seeing a lot now is obviously software or AI, which is used in the healthcare sphere. Again, sometimes obviously a software could have sort of a health-related aspect to it, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a medical device. But if your product, if you start to have claims or the intended use or the documents you have related to your software medical device start to claim that this medical device, for example, can help to diagnose a specific condition, health condition, could help to make a recommendation on potential treatment options. For example, what we see in the market, right, like blood pressure, things like that. That software would then potentially be deemed to be a medical device. For Thailand now, we don't have a specific law governing software as a medical device, so that is still subject to the general requirements of the Medical Device Act, and the classification is still.
Mostly will be class. If it's a physical blood pressure machine, it's a class 1.
Yeah.
However, if it's in some sort of a watch or a mobile phone, it may be class 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So it depends. Yeah. And also for AI right now, the FDA has a guideline for AI products. Most of them will be 2, 3, and 4, depending on the risk of the product itself. If it is intended for a very serious illness or diseases, it may be classified as a class 4 high risk.
Right. And the reason why the different classifications matter is because the level of scrutiny from the FDA under different classes will be different, right? So low risk product, the documentation requirement that you would need to register the product would be significantly less than what you would expect from a class 4 product.
Yes.
So that again comes to how you want to classify the product and how the FDA deems your product, the risk-based approach which the FDA takes. So again, that leads into the level of requirements in terms of documents, in terms of what you need to prove to the FDA regarding the product itself, could be significantly different depending on the risk level.
Yeah, and go back to drugs. When we say new drug, it means new to the Thai market or new to the Thai FDA, new chemical, new combination, and things like that. So it's new to the FDA. And then if you have a second product to the new drug, it may be classified as a new generic, which is the FDA requires a local or a Thai bioequivalent study in Thailand. And then for generic, it's like an OTC, which means that the drugs that are already in Thai market, that is not classified as new.
Right. And just the terms of that you see in terms of the drugs in the slide, they may be for someone who is not used to the Thai market, they may be a bit strange, especially controlled drugs, dangerous drugs. These are just how they are labeled in the Drug Act, the law governing drugs. But again, generally speaking, if you have a new drug that is not an OTC product, they will either be classified in one of these categories. And again, that means there will be stringent requirements in terms of the registration requirements and post-market as well, depending on how you classify the product. And comparing the term between specially controlled drugs and dangerous drugs, that's generally linked to where the product can be first marketed in Thailand, right? For example, a specially controlled drug, you can only sell into a hospital first, right?
So into hospitals, and you need to have a prescription,
right?
The doctor's prescription to buy these drugs,
right?
And you can buy them only from hospitals or clinics,
yeah,
or from pharmacies that have the license.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the dangerous drugs as well, you cannot find, you cannot sell to pharmacies.
Right. So I mean, again, that means that generally speaking, when you have a new product in Thailand, it is quite restrictive in terms of how you can sell or market a product, right? You can't just go and sell it generally to the general public.
Yeah.
And in terms of the registration pathways, obviously, the main registration requirements under these laws are through the FDA. And again, if you some of you may be aware, it does take quite some time to register a new product in Thailand, particularly if it's a drug product. Could take up to 8 months, 9 months.
Well, for new drugs, it could be like 1.5 years. For medical device class 4, it should be the same 1.5 years. However, time starts when the FDA accepts the application and issue the acknowledgement number for you. And right now, all submissions to the FDA is the e-submission. So sometimes when a group of product, the FDA has a working group for a specific type of product classification. For example, for new drug, the FDA may have like 2 or 3 persons to do the review. Therefore, when you do the e-submission, your product will be in queue. So it may take 2 or 3 months before the FDA can, select your product and do the first review to see if all the documents are sufficient or complete. Then they will issue the acknowledgement.
Right.
So after that time, then the registration time starts.
Yeah. But I mean, so again, it does take quite a long time to bring a product into market in Thailand. So if you're looking at, in terms of planning, right, you need to sort of plan ahead by quite some time. And usually if it's a drug product, we would, expect at least 1.5 to 2 years planning to before product comes to market, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you are planning to bring in a drug, for example, you need to provide time to set up a company, obtain the import license, do the GMP clearance, and do the product registration,
Yep.
which takes some time. So time before product registration, then you have to give maybe 4 to 6 months
Right.
from experience.
Right. And some of the other issues that could come up in terms of when the FDA is reviewing, right? Again, how you classify the product. For example, if you were to submit the product for registration without really being certain of what the classification of the product, when it gets to the FDA, they could turn around and say, this is the wrong product classification. That would even cause even more delays because you have to go back and do the application again. We do have a process where the FDA can be consulted right beforehand to see how your product would be classified, and then that, for example, if you so your product was in a gray area, you weren't certain how it would be classified, you could potentially submit a request to the FDA for them to classify the product. They would issue a written document to confirm the type. Right?
The other option is that you can do the in-consultation with the FDA, which they prefer. They would like to know or learn about the product that you would like to register, learn about the drugs and technical information that you can provide, so the FDA can, plan ahead that, okay, this product will be registered in with the FDA in Thailand in what month ahead, so they can do the planning of their working group as well. So yeah, for drugs, the FDA prefer the consultation.
Yeah, and in terms of timing, as Kun mentioned already, the FDA is moving towards sort of online, right? That we have an e-submission system, e-payment, e-tracking. These things are intended to shorten the time period we needed for the review process to make it easier for business operators. But having said that, in practice, it may not always be the case, right? So even if it's e-submission, the FDA may still require you to submit documents in paper. They may request for more information. They could ask you to come in to give, to give further details regarding the product. So again, these things need to be factored in, sort of potential delays in getting the licenses.
Yeah. However, I noticed that recently the FDA doesn't go beyond the timeline in the citizen manual. For example, if a new drug, the citizen manual says 250 days, working days, the approval or the rejection will be within 250 working days. Yeah. So the timeline of the FDA is quite precise. There also are the regulatory reliance pathway, which we will discuss further in the next slides. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe. Yeah. The FDA accepts the approvals from stringent regulatory authorities. For example, WHO, EMA, Europe, US FDA, Health Canada, TGA Australia, or PMDA Japan for drugs and medical devices. However, this doesn't mean that if your product registered in one of these authorities, SRA, the FDA, you don't have to register in Thailand. It doesn't mean that. It means that you can use the same documentation from this, from the approval of the SRA to submit to the FDA, and the evidence that the product is registered and approved by one of these SRAs to the Thai FDA. And the timeline, the review timeline of the FDA will be shortened. Maybe instead of 100%, it will be shortened to 70%. And we have experienced that if you have the evidence of these approvals for medical device, the approval time is very fast because both medical device and drugs, the expert review will not require in this case.
Right. But I think one of the questions that we get asked a lot is if our product is registered, for example, in an ASEAN country, in Singapore, in Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, does that mean that it can automatically be registered in Thailand? So the short answer is no. Even though we have the ASEAN harmonization process, meaning that the documents required to register products are aligned in jurisdictions in ASEAN itself, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to register the product again in Thailand. And also, even though there is ASEAN harmonization, each country does have specific laws as well. So there will be differences in terms of minor requirements. But generally speaking, firstly, if you have a product that's registered in these countries that Kun Prim has mentioned, particularly in ASEAN, it may help in terms of preparing the documents before you come to Thailand, because obviously the documents would be aligned, right? But again, you need to register in Thailand again, but the timeline may be shortened further by the fact that the FDA now has these alliances or these recognitions of these foreign regulatory pathways already.
Yeah.
So this is touching on some of the key issues that commonly we face. I think the first one, and we may talk a little bit a lot, but I think again, just to emphasize how important it is to first, before you even start to think about coming into Thailand, is how your product would be classified under the Thai law, because how your product is classified leads on, as we were saying at the beginning, to what law would govern your product, and therefore what requirements you would need to comply with in terms of bringing your product into Thailand and registering your product. So the first point, very key, is to get an understanding of your product, to understand how it would be classified, and then it would lead to what requirements you would need to set up a company in Thailand.
Yes. For the overseas manufacturer, for drugs, it's very important because right now, all the local manufacturers in Thailand are PICS GMP compliant. Therefore, the FDA accepts drugs from overseas from the manufacturer who are PICS GMP certified as well. However, if there are other quality standards that are different from PICS GMP, the FDA also have different pathways or different requirements. For example, the FDA may do the site visit, do the physical inspection of the overseas manufacturer. Also, they do the very tedious document review of the manufacturing facility. So just to keep in mind that the FDA has certain requirements for the quality standards of the overseas pharmaceutical manufacturers. And as Kun Praveen mentioned in the earlier slides, if the products are classified differently, for example, for food supplements that you would like to make health claims, it may be classified as a herbal products. In that case, the manufacturing facility, the overseas manufacturer will have to provide PICS GMP as well instead of the food GMP. So that's go back to the product classifications that you would like to register in Thailand.
And the other one, I think that what we often see or we get questions from clients is in terms of labeling, because obviously, sometimes a product, you may have products which already have labels which you use in other markets, whether that label, the package insert is acceptable for Thailand. Just to note that under each of these laws, whether it's a drug, medical device, food, cosmetic, there are specific labeling requirements or package insert requirements as well, right? So before you bring a product into Thailand, you need to ensure that you do have complete labels in accordance with these laws. They also include requirements to have labeling in in Thai language. That means that certain information will need to be shown in Thai. So I think, for example, foods, right? You could bring a label product into Thailand, but you need to ensure that the sticker complying with the Thai labeling requirements is placed on the product before it goes to market.
Within 30 days.
Yeah. So I mean, again, these are sort of the sometimes people bring in the products and they're not aware of the labeling requirements. But for healthcare products, they will have specific labeling requirements. So you need to ensure that you check and place the correct labels on the products before they go to market in Thailand.
Yeah, and for imported products, the FDA at the port of entry will also check labeling. So if they see that the labels do not comply to the regulations, the shipment will get stuck at the port. Yeah.
So I think we have just under 10 minutes left. We will open it up in case there are any Q&As. We'll be happy to answer to the extent we can.
Do you guys have any questions in the conversations? So there's one question. Does the product registration have an expiration period, or does it need to be renewed? You already replied, right? Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, the product registered for drugs, the renewal is 7 years. So you need to do the renewals within 7 years. But for medical device as well, you need to do the renewal of the product license. Foods and cosmetics, 3 years. Foods, no expiration date.
Thank you very much. It was actually my question. Because before you talk about like the risk to give the license to a distributor, maybe this expiration period can be a way to play with. So it's very important. Thank you.
So I think just we have some time, just in case we're waiting for other questions. Going back to setting up the entity, right? If you were looking at the option of not using a distributor, in Thailand, obviously most company, if you set up an MNC, usually it's in the form of a company, and therefore, obviously, if you have Thai partners, that makes it easier. But if you were setting up yourself as a foreign majority-owned company, therefore you would be subject to the Foreign Business Act, and obviously under the Foreign Business Act, there are licensing requirements under there. Or if you are, for example, a company that imports and wholesales only, one exemption under the Foreign Business Act would be to set up with a minimum capital requirement of 100 million baht. That would give you the exemption to operate without getting the foreign business license, because the process to get the foreign business license in Thailand can be quite difficult. So most companies you would need to look at in terms of before even getting to the phase where you register the product in Thailand. We mean you need to think about planning how you set up the company in Thailand so that you could operate the import business as well.
Okay, so I guess there is no more questions. Okay, I don't see any other questions, people. So I think we can close this webinar. So I will repeat that this webinar, episode 3, will be on YouTube channel from FTCC. So I would like to thank you to everybody who attend to this meeting, and especially our guest, Baker McKenzie. Okay, thank you very much for the quality of the presentations. And of course, the public, if you need to ask questions more in details, you can, of course, ask Baker McKenzie by contacting them directly by email, or ask for presentation that they show to you. So for me, I would like to thank you for everyone for joining to this meeting, and have a nice day.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
Thank you. Have a good day.